Hey guys, this is the Blue Collar Future Podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Robison, with host Jessie Demler with us again today.
What's up,
Jessie,
guys? What's up, dude? How are you?
well, another day, another podcast. You just went to IBS. We were talking about this before.
Hmm.
You're one of those tradesman influencers that's ruining the trades and stuff. Essentially. Yeah, yeah. Basically just getting paid to go fly places and stuff.
Yeah, that dude's thread post still cracks me up. Of like, you just get a ticket because you have 50,000 followers. I was like, why are you mad at the plumbers for going to that?
Yeah.
Love it. Gotta
Well,
love it.
we were talking about it too because there are people that go to trade shows a ton. I think they're cool.
Mm.
You said that you mainly go to World of Concrete, and that's what you mainly try to do. Is that all you've been to? Is this your first time going to IBS, or kind of what's that been?
Yeah, yeah. I've been to World of Concrete twice, and now IBS once. And we went with IBS because of company cam, so that's what we all flew out there for, was to hang out with them and meet everybody. So it's like I said, it was me, working with Matt, Lady Plumber, Raven Builders, Kevin, and Tim, Awesome Framer was there, but I never saw him because his name was on a bunch of stuff. Like, he was all over the place. And then I don't know if you know the Bearded Cider. He was there for a little bit. It's a cool dude. Joey Schumann. That was
Oh
he
yeah,
came
yeah,
and stopped by and said hi. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's cool. You went and saw his
yeah,
doors.
yeah, dude, they're ridiculous. That one, he said. So the one they had there was like 19 feet tall, but he said there's a 24-foot one that's 100K. I'm like, who? I asked the guy, I was like, how many of those have you sold? He's like, maybe three. I was like, why do you build these? Like,
Imagine that, dude. $100,000 door.
I just imagine like it's some rich dude, and he's like, well, my wife really wants it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other reason to have that door.
No, no. I
But
mean,
good for them, good for them.
yeah. And there's houses around here like I know you've worked on some houses
Hmm.
that you're just like, what in the, why do you even want that monstrosity or that in your house or whatever? Like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
some houses we've seen with some stupid stuff. Yeah, they just
The
do it
one
because
that
they,
they can't, yeah. The one that always gets me is it'll be like people that have finally gotten to like the empty nester stage of their life. And like, okay, now I'm gonna build the massive house. I'm like,
yeah,
no one lives here with you. It's just you and like the husband and wife. Why? Like, why do you want to clean all this?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny because like people have kids when they're younger and they got these little tiny houses and then they have dreams of getting bigger houses and kids leave, but the dreams don't. So then they just go get this massive house for
Yep.
no reason. It's like, except for
Yep.
nowadays, I think kids are staying at home a lot longer than have typically.
Yeah. And I guess if you had kids young, you probably have grandkids young. So then if you build a house that everybody can hang out at, crazy.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we're gonna do a topic episode today, and this is your topic. This is your idea.
Hit it. I got one.
So, yeah. So, we are gonna talk about when to promote someone and give them opportunity to move up the ladder at work. And we can kind of take this from two ways, like that someone who's listening to this and wanting to know how they can potentially move up the ladder can also look at this and say what, apply it to their own situation to use it to get
Hmm.
ahead. But we're gonna also take it from an aspect of maybe being in a leadership position and knowing when to promote certain people and how. Yeah, and to give them
Beautiful.
opportunities. So
Yeah. And that's
you want to
perfect because
kick
it's
us
so
off?
like, and that's why I brought the topic up because it's something that gets brought up to me at work, and then as well as there's some stigmas around things. We'll call them discrepancies between like how I view things and how like the older guys view things. But the young guys at work always want to ask like, "Okay, what do I do? How do I get to where you're at?" And so I was like, this would be a great episode because there's a lot of companies that are like I'm of the belief that if someone is ambitious, hardworking, and willing to like figure everything out, I don't need to keep him as like I don't need to keep him out of a a more skilled position, if that makes sense. So like for us, you have laborers, hotties, operators, masons, the foreman, like there's all those steps. And like when I was coming up, it was like, well, I was a hottie for 5 years, so you've got to be a hottie for 5 years. And that's at this point it's silly because, the world's not there's not a lot of masons coming in to replace those old masons. So it's like if I make him wait 5 years just because you did 5 years, by the time he's there, you're going to be retired and no one could have taught him or like that sort of stuff. And furthermore, if one of these young men is ambitious and motivated and willing to be there early, be there late, overtime, figure everything out that they needed to figure out, why wouldn't you let him move up? Because like, why not reward that behavior, rather than suppress it? And so that's where I'm at as far as that. Like, if someone comes into the job and I'm like, "Okay, I got to start you out here because that's your green, right?" You usually they start shoveling mud or like doing something simple, and like that's kind of the barrier to entry, if you will. Because
Yeah.
the like if you can't do that, then like you're not going anywhere else. But you get the kid in that comes in, he's like, "Okay, I'm good at like I can keep that ahead. The Masons don't have to ask for anything. I like they know when to order. They figure out like stocking ahead, all that sort of stuff, getting ahead. And if you're going to get ahead, then you have time to step into the next role. So I personally like to reward that. I'm like, there's one of these young men that is on my crew and they do all those things. I'm like, of course I'm going to be like, okay, well, in your free time, come over here and help me tool up this wall. So at least you get some play with it. Or like, hey, hop in here and lay a couple of them, like just so they can play with it and like get a feel. Cause um, like back when I came up, it was, there was a couple of the guys that let me do that. But when I became a Mason, it was like, okay, you've been going so hard at this for so long. So when I got to a Mason, it was like I didn't really have a ton of like experience. So that buffer of that first like month was like all training versus if I can let them like if you guys get ahead and you can touch it and interact with it and get used to it, then maybe when we move you under the wall it's not so much of a drastic change. You're like, I know how to butter a brick, I know how to do this sort of stuff. And so that's kind of my mindset with those things versus how I was brought up, or like the guys before me where it's more of like a you're required to deal with the BS the whole time, just because someone else did. Like I would much rather give them the opportunity to show their ambition and be rewarded for it and let them like, okay, if you're good at this, then you can get good at that. And then once you have enough time playing with all the other stuff, like if you're proficient at all these things, then why wouldn't we put you on the wall? And then if you're proficient in like one of the kids wanted to become the operator, he was like, how do I get from, labor to that? To be honest, he doesn't like heights, right? I was like, well, why would I keep you over here if you don't want to go up 75 feet with us? That like, if you're in a better fit over here, why wouldn't I, kind of cross promote you over to being the operator and run the lift and all that stuff? And I think like a lot of that gets lost in the generation that's older than me because they're so set on like, no, I did it this way, you have to do it this way, sort of stuff. And now I feel like I've been rambling, so I'm going to let you talk.
That's fine. You were on some good stuff there, so I was just letting you go.
I'm just being a smartass.
One thing that I took from what you were talking and kind of what we were talking about before we started recording is it's a lot of personalized basis stuff. So like you were just saying you like operators kind of above pod tender but below mason type stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be like a natural progression that some people would think that you have to strictly stick to because other people have. But if
Mm-hmm.
someone's working with you and they don't particularly want to go up high and be a mason, doing that type of stuff, it does make sense to go switch them over to an operator. So it takes like a communication with them, figure out what they want to do, what they can do, and what they're motivated to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that communication part is hard because I think a lot of guys, like you said, some of the older guys are like, "Well, no, you have to do it this way because I did it this way." And
Yeah.
it takes someone leading the group that is trying to understand the employees and who they are and what they want to do. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I think as an employee, you can try to be clear on letting your coworkers maybe know what you like to do or what your goals are and that type of stuff if they aren't talking to you about it.
And yeah, I think we talked about that on one of our other episodes of like that it's important to have that conversation because it's like you can't like I can't force like say that kid that wanted to be the operator, right? Like he's mechanically inclined, like doesn't like heights, that sort of stuff. So if I had forced him on the path to become a mason rather than an operator, like he would have never enjoyed it or like maybe never been good at it because these are the things that he wanted to do. So it's like you got to have that conversation of like I think there gets to a point in someone's career where you can notice like, okay, dude, we're at the point where like we could move you around because you're so like you've shown this progress here and this ambition and motivation and drive. So it's like you need at that point you need to have the conversation with the guys of like, what do you want out of this? Like how can I help you get there? Or like or and vice versa, like they could ask me like, how do I get to here? Because I have guys that are like, okay, well, I want kind of to follow the progression that you did, as in me, of going like from like haughty up through the ranks to foreman. Like, how did you get there? And so like I can kind of help them like, okay, this is what I did. This is what's helped me get there and what helped me, be the guy that can run the site because I know how to do X, Y, and Z. So that's the things you need to accomplish. But like you said, you need to be able to have a conversation, which for some reason in construction is hard to do. Communication seems like an easy skill that's overlooked for whatever reason. I think, a lot of it's just go, go, go. Whereas you need to be able to sit and talk and like figure out what the goal of, everybody involved is and put people in the right path and empower them to follow those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from experience, there's a lot of stuff that goes on throughout the day, so that communication's hard.
Hmm.
And it's super important to focus on communication and like keeping emotions in check and pride and ego in check as well because like button heads happens a lot in this whole scenario, like guys trying to keep other guys down, just not even really thinking about it, like subconsciously maybe,
Hmm.
and then like guys being upset that they can't move up and they're annoyed and the communication gets broken down there because they're just frustrated. It's I don't know if there's a right answer to any of it, but I know that open lines of communication are super important. And yeah,
Hmm.
nobody's very good at it. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you need to focus on having that communication and then being able to step back from what you're working on and be able to see the whole job site picture. Even if you're just a laborer, you need to be able to like take a step back, take a minute and be like, okay, what's going on today and how can I show up
Hmm.
better? As a foreman, you need to be able, especially to do that. That's a skill that foremans have to have. They can't be so sucked into being on the tools that they can't help everybody else move up and get the job done properly. So, like a lot of this stuff is stuff that I'm working on day to day, and I think it's a constant pivoting thing, or because construction's so dynamic.
I think the saying is like, 'cause it's hard to see the forest for the trees. So like when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see the big picture of it, right? Because you're surrounded
Yeah.
by this, so that's what you see versus uh this massive forest or the big picture. So I think it's like you said, it's important to be conscious of like, wait, I gotta step back and like, okay, because even if like say you're the best finisher or the best bricklayer or whatever it may be, that's great. But if you're just focused on this right here, you're not seeing what's going on around you. Maybe you're leaving something behind or someone behind or something's not in the most efficient place it could be.
Well, we've discussed this quite a bit before in different ways, but like in order to get to the point where you're a foreman, you have to have that sort of drive to be the best. But it's almost like once you get to being the foreman, that just doesn't even matter anymore, and you need to like completely discard it. So you need to
Hmm.
like completely just be like, you know what? I just spent all this time learning how to do everything, exactly right and becoming the best and the fastest. Okay, but now I need to figure out how to help everybody else get to that point as well. Is like the change in roles. So if you can change that drive to be the best at laying brick to being the best at helping everybody else figure out how to move up that ladder as well and help the job
Hmm.
go along, that would be a really good way to do it. But that's really hard, especially because
Hmm.
it takes so long to get to that point, like years of showing up and being like, I need to do this and this and this and this, and today I'm going to try to work on being X amount faster and more efficient and all that stuff. And it gets like hardwired in your brain. So it becomes really hard to see how other guys are doing things and not just pick apart everything they're doing, because you almost build that up in your own mind where you're doing that to yourself all the time. So
Hmm.
like that's what happens a lot, is guys will be critiquing and thinking they're helping, but they're really just almost pushing people back down. They're like, you know what, you're not doing this right. You need to do it like this exactly. And so that's where
Hmm.
kind of the old school mentality comes into play. It's like, no, it's not. You have to do it this way. There's some places where you want to have some continuity in the way that you do
Hmm.
stuff, but being able to help these guys in their own way get to that point is important.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. It's like I said, I can be the best mason on the wall or the fastest mason on the
Yeah,
wall, but it really doesn't benefit the company because I can't be the only one.
yeah, yeah,
And like you're saying too, is like, hey, here's how I do it, and this is why I'm good at it. But like, I can show someone that, but if that's not how it's going to work for him, I can't force him to do it that way, you know? So it's hard one to be able to do everything at a certain like to look at something and be like, okay, that would take me 5 minutes, but maybe it's going to take that guy 10. And it's like, oh, I can hop in and fix it, or like I got to stand back and let him do it. And like, hey, man, this is what I do. Try that and let them do it. You know, because otherwise they're never going to get to this point. And
yeah,
that's if my guys and my crew can't move up, I'd view that as like I'm failing as a leader because you know it's the whole like lighthouse and tugboat thing again. Like I can't
yeah,
yank everyone that way. Like I need to be more of the example. And if
yeah,
I'm not standing as a good example and leading them to where they should be, then I'm failing.
yeah, yeah. I think, and for people listening to this that are like figuring out how they can get ahead and stuff, it helps to be able to understand what like the boss is thinking and the foreman's thinking. If you're in a place where your foreman is just an asshole and like keeping you down on purpose, and you know it's on purpose, there's some problems there. But a lot of times it's just difference in communication. So figuring out how to understand where they're coming from, you know, where they're maybe telling you how to do something and it comes off to you as putting you down and stuff, but they're just trying to kind of lead you along, and the way that they communicate's a little bit different. Like it goes both ways.
Hmm.
And I think someone who's really trying to move up can figure that out and they can do that. But I think guys that don't really care if they move up the ladder and do anything else, that just comes across to them as that you're just putting them down essentially. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because it's so personalized to people,
sure.
and
And
you
that's
really have to figure out how to communicate with every person differently to
mhm.
help them. So
Yeah, and that's you see that maybe we see it more so now than we ever have because how like the social dynamic is going. But like when I was a teenager and coming up in this like the the guys were assholes. Like it's just, hey,
yeah,
it's we're gonna by brute force make you the man we want you to be, you know. So like either
yeah,
like get there or don't. Whereas like now it's like if I or anyone was to treat like the younger kids like in that way, they're probably not gonna stick around because it's just not how they learn. Like you're saying is you have the old foreman that like maybe he's a dickhead and like that's just how it is. But like I as a teenager and younger man, I had a foreman who like that dude. Um, he's one of the hardest working people I know. Just driven and wanted to get everything done the way he did. Like maybe his communication wasn't the best, or like he just didn't have that particular skill. And so it was always like he was one of those dudes that like no matter what you did, he was still like trying to go hard. So it's hard to impress him. And I can see where there's a lot of people that would be like, hey, I don't like screw that guy. But for me, I was like,
Yeah.
I never want to hear him say anything. Like, so as the man trying to come up underneath him, I was like, I want to be so good at this that like, if he were to turn around and be like, Jesse, why are you on your phone? And he looked like all he'd have to do is look and be like, oh, huh, like everything's done. Like, everything, whatever, that sort of thing. Or like, I took it as a challenge to be so far up his ass that like he couldn't be mean to me, and that's, maybe that's because some different situations and stuff that I'm in, but like nowadays there's still that type of person that needs that motivation, but then there's the type of person that needs like you to communicate with them or like show them the sort of stuff, or like there's a type of person that like they grow through praise rather than critique, or praise rather than motivated to prove you, not necessarily like I was proving him wrong, but like I wanted to prove a point, right? And so like you just have so many dynamics, and as especially as a foreman, like if you're the other side looking at him like, how do I get this kid to do this? You need to be able to have that communication or understand who that young man is as a person so that you can properly empower and motivate him. And then Stu on the other foot, you need to be able to see like, hey, my foreman's probably dealing with a lot of shit. You know, like we showed up to the job and they said we were 2 months behind before we could even show up. And he's got a lot of stress because he's your direct communication to the boss, who's probably a bigger asshole than he is. And like, all that sort of stuff. So it's I think both sides need to understand who each person is as a human, and like, you know, okay, this is how he works, this is how I can best empower him, and this is how my leader works, and this is how I can best solve his problems with him, or, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's a lot of good points there. Well, I was gonna keep beating that on the head. Do you have something else to add?
No, I was just gonna say we have like we can talk about the you've got the motivated individuals, right? But like you were saying earlier, is there's guys that come in and they're like they're perfectly okay with being here. And like you can't, like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
Hey, some guys, you still need someone to fill that role. So like again, understanding that like, hey, I'm good here, and like, you know, as long as he's really good at this, like there's still opportunity to make a little bit more money. Like obviously there's a cap in that position, but like there's also that guy or girl, that's just like, no, I'm good here. Like I just want to be this. Like I just
Yeah.
want to be a really, really good a really, really good hottie, which is worth its weight in gold in our crew, like, but like some people just want to they don't want to become the mason or the operator, or like some dudes just want to be a good enough bricklayer, or like, sort of stuff. So you can't like, still on the other foot, you can't force that guy to like, hey, I really need you to do like, I want you to move up and become this if they don't want to become that as well. Which it sounded like you have a little bit of that as well in your
Yeah,
area.
yeah. And that's a super important point because not everybody's the same and not everybody has the same goals. So, like I think a lot of people when they hire people on have these ideas that they're gonna move up and be able to do X amount of work and be able to lead a team or a crew one day or lead a job one day. I think that's in this industry a goal of a lot of people. Maybe not some of the guys that want to keep people down. Like there's a couple different types of guys out there that have their companies and stuff, but like a lot of guys want to hire people on and just they want people to have be laborers and stuff. Like,
Hmm.
but I think there's a big group of people that have ideas that they want to hire people on and have them learn and do as much as possible. But some people don't care that much. They want to have a job, they want to show up and put their hours in and go home and be done. So that's something to consider, right? And the communication is a hard part because it's like that kind of can be figured out through a conversation with them when they start working, but it's not always that way. They don't always have that
Hmm.
conversation. So that puts a lot of pressure and tension there because you have this boss that wants you to move up and they're trying to help you be better, but you just don't really care and want to, steadily learn and some new skills in maybe, and you're not really worried about it.
Mm.
Dealing with those different types of people and being able to switch between someone who's really ambitious and someone who just is there essentially is really hard. That's a whole different, because that's polar opposite people that you're having to deal with.
Mm.
And that's where having some lenience and grace and understanding how people communicate, being the employee and the foreman, is important, because being able to switch those modes of communication there is like, it's super hard. It is super hard to not just freaking treat everybody the exact same and be on everybody's ass, especially because that's
Yeah.
how the industry has been forever, like you said.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and it's like I've got, these certain amount of guys that are willing to show up, 30 minutes early with me. Then I've got the guy that shows up like right dead nuts on time. I'm like, and I can get upset about that, whatever it is. Like I can be like, why aren't you here? Like we could have used you, but that's just not what he wants to do. He's like, no, I'm here for 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever the required time is that day, and then I'm going home. If that's what you want, whatever. As long as you're good at like what you're doing, that's cool with me. You don't stand between me and getting done. You're there, you're doing your part. So it's like I need that guy. But it's,
yeah,
as a foreman, it can get frustrating. You're like, you could do this. Like you could, but like you said, it's you got to be able to turn that switch of like, okay, those guys want to do that. This guy wants to do this, and like neither of them are necessarily wrong. It's just you just got to be able to know how to like work with either one of them, and that's a wild skill. Like as a foreman or a leader of people, is like that's a like you said, you can be as good as you are at labor, but if you're not good at like stepping back and like learning how to do this, then it's a tough position to be in.
yeah, then it just doesn't matter. And that's an important distinction there, because not everybody wants to be a foreman, and I think most people know that it's not that easy, but some
Hmm.
people don't realize. But going along with that, a lot of people have no intentions of ever being a foreman, but they do just want to be really good. So you have to take that into account, because I mean, you almost have a whole bunch of classifications of employees, like, and it really is just personalized to every level. Like, some people just want to be a laborer forever and it doesn't matter. Some people want to
Hmm.
get really good at one thing. Like, for example, for what we do, like maybe doing stairs, concrete stairs. Maybe someone wants to just be really good at that. And that's just essentially, they are part of the crew and they work, and on our crew we do, everybody does everything. So, and that's something we'll talk about, a smaller company that doesn't necessarily have set roles all the time.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
like, maybe they just want to be really good at that, and that's just what they do, and they're the stair person, or um, whatever it might be. So you can assist these people in getting to that point, and having a really good person to finish stairs is really important too. So, like, you can't
So,
write this off. But once you get to a point where you're really good at that, you essentially have all of the stuff down for all of this, the concrete finishing skills down to where, and the forming skills, to where it's like, what do you do now? You're pretty
hmm.
much in that spot. You can move on to learning how to lead a crew. And if you don't want to do that, well, yeah, cool, awesome. Now we've got a really skilled finisher, former, whatever you want to be. So,
Hmm.
and if someone's not communicating that and they don't really want to give you that, you can kind of get that from people, if they kind of like jump to do things, specifically on the job. You can kind of see things that they like to do, and let them do more of that type of stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
It's yeah, it's just, it really comes down to each different person, what they want to do. Not everybody wants to be a foreman, not everybody wants to move up the ladder. And there's different parts in the ladder that people are just fine at.
Hmm.
It's Yeah. Yep, it comes down to paying attention and communicating, which not a lot of people in construction are good at. So I think that's why this is always a question that's asked and talked about.
So with You say like as a smaller, how many guys, like what's on your guys' payroll? Like
We
how big are you?
have we have 6 of us full time, and it's just one crew.
Hmm.
We have the ability to split up to multiple crews. We're just kind of at a spot right now where it's kind of, do we split up to multiple crews and do different jobs every day, or just do like big jobs every day and then
Hmm.
split up in the afternoons? Because essentially we have like, for us, we'll have a big concrete pour in the morning, and then
Hmm.
usually people will stick around all day with that, and then like throughout the day we'll send a guy here to prep this job and maybe another guy to help him, and then maybe some other guys to another job to prep it for the next day or something. So like it's pretty, we're moving around a lot. And so I don't know, it's, we're at a point right now where it kind of makes sense to stay as one group, and everybody kind of learns how to do everything kind of all at the same time. Like a lot of concrete companies, bigger concrete companies will have finishers, carpenters. They'll even have different crews for pouring, or maybe everybody will help pour, but like everybody has like their set jobs, and it's more of
Hmm.
a setup like you guys have where you can like, specifically you are a hod tender or you are a mason.
Hmm.
We on our hand, like we, everybody does everything. So, and that's kind of how it is with smaller crews. So I was going to ask you what it would look like in your scenario for smaller companies that are just one crew, where you might not have the a ladder exactly to move up.
Sure. And that's when I was younger, that's, we were more like what you've got going on. And so it's only been in the last couple of years like that our company is more or less doubled in size as far as employees and whatnot. So we've got 21 guys right now.
Yeah.
And, we're doing big commercial projects. And so there's everybody has their role, like you said. But when I was younger, it was like, you know, two hods, an operator, and like five masons or whatever it was. And so it was kind of the same thing of like as being the guy that wanted to get better at everything and grow in that situation. It was, I would get all of my stuff. I'd have, make sure the masons can keep running all day without asking me for anything. And then the next step is like the next wall's ready, right? So like the good thing about masonry is most of it's in a box, like it's built in a square or a rectangle or like something. So it's like I can get these guys going, and if I have help, you know, we can both make sure that they're good to run this wall, and then one of us can be getting this one ready, stocked out, so that like all the blocker brick is there, so that when this 4 feet is done, they move over to here. And so when it was a smaller company, and I was like, okay, I want to get from here to here, I would take it upon myself to make sure that this wall was running and with no hitches, and the masons were as productive as they could be. This next wall was ready, and so that means like when this is done, they go there as efficiently as possible. And when all that was done, then I could hop in and help them tool, or I could ask questions, or like I could get the experience that like I try to give the guys now of like, hey, come here, try this, or like certain things like that. Or if someone was going in on a Saturday, I could go in with them because it's a little less pressure to get a bunch of shit done on a Saturday or a side job or things like that. And I can go and kind of be like on his hip and learning about that stuff so that when it comes time for me to move up, I can, and things like that. And that's, I would say when I was younger, it was a lot slower of that process, right? Because like for me to move onto the wall, like I'd got to have the guy replace me. It was a little smaller scale. Whereas now I have, the 20 guys, and half of them are masons, half of them are hotties or laborers. And like I can see like, these 3, 4 guys are really good at this. And so like why wouldn't I give them the opportunity to move up here? So it's a little quicker of a process because I can at this point. And then hopefully, I have someone who can fill this position, you got to post a job ad and go through 3 or 4 people to find, one or two of them and all that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you
it's
think
been,
do
it's,
you think it's
yeah.
easier in a smaller company or a company like you guys have got right now? Which I would consider, I mean, mainly I'd consider what you guys have got maybe a bigger company, especially. for masons, because a lot of times when I see masons, they're like two guys, especially
Yeah,
it's in the residential world. Would you think it's easier or harder to move up in a smaller company or a bigger company?
I would think it's easier to learn things in a smaller company because, like,
Yeah.
it's just not as much go, go, go. It is
Yeah.
because you have less guys and you're trying to do things, but like you're probably working on a smaller project. Most of the guys, like, everybody's all known each other forever and that sort of stuff. So, like, it was easier for me to I think it was easier for me as an apprentice to learn from my journeyman because he didn't have three or four of them. Like there wasn't three, four, five guys learning on the wall. There was me, or like me and the other, like the next guy. And so I think in a smaller setting, it was easier to learn and have the time to pick up those skills versus now where it's a big company. It's like I'm the lead, or I have, my production lead or my journeyman. Like there's so much to get done. It's kind of hard to like, have that guy and be like, okay, just stick right here with me. And like, we'll do that sort of stuff. But while I think it was easier to get the opportunity to learn things and take the time to learn them in the smaller setting, I try to make it maybe quicker and easier in a different way in the bigger setting to let those guys move up. 'Cause I feel like in the smaller setting, you're limited to like, hey, we need you to be this guy. Like, no matter how good you are at this, like, we need a lift operator or we need a really good laborer, and like, you're the one that's really good at this. Whereas in the bigger setting, I'm like, I can kind of funnel people to where they want to go a little easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like,
I would,
there's more hands.
yeah, I would agree with that. I would think, and just looking from our situation to maybe others, like in a smaller company, you get to see the entire process. And a lot of times you actually do get to be hands-on in every single process every day because it's a smaller project. A little more forgiving on time. So, like, I would think it would be definitely easier to learn in a smaller company on smaller projects. Bigger company, like, I know a lot of people don't like working for bigger companies because you can kind of get lost into the amount of guys that there are and just get stuck in one little place. And if you
Mm,
are super busy and you have a lot of guys, it's really hard to look at the whole project and see everything. So, but if you have a foreman like you or someone who's really invested in letting guys do what they want, I would imagine it'd be easier to move up bigger company because in a smaller company, like you said, you have to fill a role, and
mhm.
if there isn't someone to replace you, it's kind of hard to move to a different um, task, I guess, to a different job because yeah, you need a replacement. So
With your
yeah,
situation, how does that work? Where you've got six guys and like, say you've got some guy that's trying to move like up through the ranks, how would I guess everybody can get to a point of like being where they're like, I want to say a jack of all trades in your sort of thing, but like maybe that's not the right way to say it.
I mean, we we do our best to have our guys do everything they can every day, essentially. Like try to have them finish more, form more, teach them how to do things every day. But at the end of the day, like while they're learning, they still have to do certain things. So like they'll be rakers or muckers or whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
even if they're learning how to, let's say, screed, pull the screed board. That like they'll still have to be a raker until they can really learn how to do some of the other stuff better. And then if we get a new person, like we hire somebody new, then one of the people that's kind of a raker can move on to a different thing. Or like I have no problem being a raker. It doesn't matter to me. So if somebody else wants to start doing something different and like say
Hmm.
even replace what I'm doing while we're pouring, then I have no problem teaching them. And I try to have some of the guys do my job, what I do, which is typically like sealing up and bull floating and that type of stuff. I try to have them do that type of stuff and then I can go replace them on raking. So like
Hmm.
in a in a smaller company, it's harder to move up, but you can learn everything. It's not necessarily a ladder. I just say like jack of all trades, maybe a jack of all positions. I don't know.
Yeah.
That seems like what I'm doing a lot because yeah, I move around a little bit on what we do, and I just try to have like the guys learn and take over things as they either show interest or if we just have an easy day, I'm like, hey, you come do this and I'll go rake or something like that.
Yeah.
So they can get opportunities and learn. And then as soon as we have time where maybe one of them isn't needed on a rake or something, they can just go do that or something else and it'll be fine. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like we have like all of our guys do learn how to do everything, and I don't really think we would even say we have set positions. And that helps us too, because like say we are one crew for the day. Everybody kind of on the totem pole, I guess, will have a position that they fulfill. But if we don't have a pour where everybody is together for one pour and we split up, then it increases our ability to take on different projects. Like if we can split in half and have three guys go here and three guys go there, however many people we have for the day, then everybody knows how to do everything and it's fine. So
Hmm.
yeah, we kind of just have everybody jump around essentially and learn things as they go.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
That
interesting.
that
I
makes sense.
sometimes I
Yeah.
wish that we had a little bit more of like a position setup, but it doesn't for a smaller company. I don't know if it necessarily makes sense for that either, because then guys are unhappy if they are just stuck as this bottom feeder person and they aren't allowed to go up. So
Mm.
it's a different approach that you have to take with a
Yeah.
smaller setup. But
Yeah. And that's fair because like that was what I was curious about is if you got because everything's a little more tight knit and not to say
yeah,
like with 21 guys everything's still pretty tight knit like everybody knows
yeah,
everybody we all
yeah,
whatever but
yeah.
like I
But
could see
you're not talking to 21 guys every single day all day though, you know.
right,
Like
yeah, yeah, and so I could see where like like if this person's jumping around this person or like whatever, but if everybody's kind of learning together in a cohesive environment that
yeah,
eliminates maybe it eliminates the ego side of it, right?
yeah. Hopefully. I just take the approach that I know how to do everything at this point, and I've
Hmm.
had a lot of time doing pretty much everything that we do,
Hmm.
and I don't care what I do. So I'll go be a freaking raker all day every day. I don't care. Quite frankly, it's easier for me to just put my head down and rake, then I don't have to worry about anything else that's going on, you know? Like if I can have somebody learn something for the day, that's what I try to do. I try to if I'm paying attention and have my wits about me that day at least, I
Hmm.
make an effort to be like, yeah, hey, come try and do this and try to lead people through things. But yeah, it's definitely harder to move up in a smaller position, but easier to learn things.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
guess the
I agree.
thing
And
that yeah, the two things aren't mutually exclusive, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, I think each one has its pros and cons, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And that's
depends.
I try to do the same thing as you. I'm like, if we need like if someone needs to throw mud or someone needs to stock out, I'll get up, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'm this even in a bigger setting or a more populated setting, we'll call it, like there's still that opportunity of like, hey, I need like if the young guy's trying to learn how to lay brick, it's not conducive to that to like make him every time that this side of the wall needs help for him to get up and go do it. Like it's easier for me to get up and do it because I can still lay as many brick as he did if I had to go up and shovel mud,
Mhm.
you know. And so I like that of like the leadership, if we will, of being willing to go do maybe the work that's below their skill level in a sense, so that everybody else can come up. Like
Mhm.
being kind of the foundation, if you will, or the support to like, oh,
Yeah.
I can fill your position so that you can go learn that. I like
Mhm.
I like that process or that way of
Yeah.
doing things.
Yeah. And in like as people are listening to this, I think it's important to know that I don't consider myself the greatest at this, and I also am not the greatest at communication, and things happen and people butt heads and like it just it is what it is. But I think being able to trying to come to the job with a no ego, first of all, and a calm mind, and being in the mindset of trying to help people is what I try to do, but that doesn't happen all the time. So
Mm.
I just make an effort to do that. And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, I think I got to the point where I didn't care what it is I do on the job once I realized that I can do everything and
Mm.
that I was like the top person essentially. And then I was like, wow, actually, I don't care what I do as much as I thought.
Yeah.
It's all jobs that need to be done, and it doesn't help the company to have me do even the things that I'm really good at all the time because then I'm stuck there forever and the other guys can't learn how. So, yeah, I think that it's a part of throwing away that ego and being like, you know what, I'll just do, the stuff that's way below my skill level just because I can. I mean, I'll go wash
Mm.
tools, I don't care.
Yeah.
And it just is not everybody's like that though. So
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
always going to be in a position in a situation where you're going to have a foreman or someone even above you that's willing to step down a little bit so that you can step up. Like the crabs in the
Mm.
bucket thing is
Mm.
almost innate to our nature, and if you're not conscious about letting go of that, it doesn't happen. So like you will have people constantly that are trying to keep you down, not even because they don't like you, just because they think it threatens them or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I agree. And you see that's comically like I see that with like maybe the apprentice, who's like getting good at something. They'll be like they're like, "Hey dude, I really need you to go help those guys that are a little like less skilled than you, right?" They're like, "Well, why would I do that?" I'm like, "Well, you see me with a shovel in my hand, so like what's the difference here?" But
Yeah, they think they're being demoted or something.
yeah, and I think maybe that's just because you and I are in a different position where going and doing that furthers the entire mission or the entire company, whereas like like they're worried about their job, whereas we're worried about the company and that sort of thing. Or there's a little bit of the ego as well of where like, no, I don't need to do that, I already did that, I was good at that.
It
But
it just
I like how you do it, I like that.
it takes a lot of work to get to that point though. Seriously, because like when I consciously, started to realize that I didn't care that much, I started thinking back on how many times I was like that, and I was like, why would I go do that? That's for the other guys to do, and what a crappy way to be. It doesn't hurt you, and it does is hurt other people that may be trying to take an opportunity to move up. um it's all it is ego, and getting rid of that's hard.
100%. And that's one second, I just need to grab a charger. But yeah, I think maybe it's the male thing, maybe it's the construction thing of like learning how to drop that ego and like benefiting everyone as a whole rather than benefiting the self. But it's hard. It's
Yeah.
I'm sure you're in the same boat. Like it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of like conscious, ability to get to that point of like to be that type of
Yeah,
man, that type of leader.
still taking
Yeah, still, yeah,
effort.
same, same. I
Yep.
I can't act like I'm up here like some days where I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? Like we have
Yeah.
20 guys here. Why am I? But
Yeah.
it happens. None of us are perfect. And like you said, I can't act like I'm not the best. I'm not the most knowledge or most skilled mason on the wall. Like there's guys that are twice my age that know more than I'll ever know. And so it's yeah, like you said, it's just trying to be better about like the ego thing and the picture as a whole rather than the small picture and going and helping and furthering everything so that everybody else can grow as well.
The calm man, having learned how to govern himself, knows how to adapt himself to others. So that's from As a Man Thinketh. I don't know if you've heard that book or read it before.
Yep. Yep.
um it's that hit different because being able to control your emotions and yourself in general is how you get to be able to communicate with other people. And
Hmm.
that's until I really started working really hard on that and not like getting upset at stupid things and getting in arguments with people all the time, like for no reason. Cause like I've had my fair share of arguments on the job site, and I'm not very good at situations where people come up to me and are annoyed and are kind
Hmm.
of coming at me with a certain amount of energy. I'm like, all right, you need back up. Like this is not this is not what I want to deal with right now. And I'm
Yeah.
not very good at keeping my calm about me there. So that's it hit close to home because I was like, you'll never be able to be a good leader if you can't control yourself first. And that's
Hmm.
actually how you're able to make the switch to teaching other people because you have to do it specifically to them. So you have to learn how to adapt yourself to them, but you can't do that unless you can control yourself. So I don't know. It was that hit differently because it was the other day, and it's something I've worked on a lot, and probably something that I need to keep like somewhere so I can read it close.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while since I read that book, but that would be a good one to touch back on.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been
Speaking of that, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, because it's in the same lines of that. Have you? There's a video, I think. Maybe it's something else, but I saw it's. Uh, I think it's Marcus Aurelius, the man who conquered the world. Have you ever? I've been meaning to watch that because it seems like it's on that same line.
I don't think so, but I should
Not that
watch
that's
it too.
relevant to our conversation today, but
Well, sort of is, and
sort of.
that's
Yeah, I guess.
and as you're coming up as an employee and someone that's wanting to move up the ladder, that's important as well because you'll never be able to efficiently move up and learn and grow in a company if you can't figure out how to um, take criticism, but also like work with other people. And that takes being able to control yourself at a minimal level, people that
Hmm.
have um, people that can't control themselves at all and get super angry at stupid little things are the people that don't stick around very long most of the time. So it's yeah, there's a lot to it, and I think it takes both sides being able to work through these types of things and a lot of grace as well. And I think people don't give themselves enough grace and they don't give other people enough grace in these situations either.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point along those like because I have had the guy that like he's trying to learn, like say, he's trying to learn how to be a mason, but like you can't correct him because he takes everything as like a fault. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Whereas like I'm like I need you to fix this. I'm not telling you you're an idiot. I need you, like, this is how this needs to be done. And like I've been there too. It's like I'm just trying my freaking best. Why are you being an
yeah,
asshole? But like you said, I think both sides can benefit from maybe some introspection and learning how to be more at peace with themselves, as you're saying.
yeah, yeah. And as I look back on times where I've had altercations, I guess, verbal altercations, whatever it is with people. It's almost always just that breakdown of communication, like assuming that they mean one thing when they don't, and they're just, trying to point out, hey, yeah, this needs to be this way. And instead of taking it so
Hmm.
personally, you can have a little bit of understanding, but being able to remove yourself emotionally from the situation is hard. And
Yeah.
that ties back into someone who's ambitious is going to be trying hard and take a lot of pride in their work, and it's hard to disconnect that from um, critiques and criticism in general as
Hmm.
being like personal. It's really hard to do that when all you're trying to do is the best that you can. um, yeah, anyways, that's what I got on that. I think we've covered that pretty good.
Yeah, I like this. I like this episode. That was good. Hopefully, it helps the people that have been asking that about that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, yeah, if anybody has any other additional questions about this, I guess you can drop them in the DM one of us or in the channel. like specific questions, because I know we didn't like cover a specific process, but I don't really think it's a specific process in general. I don't think there is one, especially because it's different company to company. But if anybody has like a specific question on that, just reach out to one of us, and yeah, and we'll do a Q&A episode next time. So that would be a good time to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And if you're listening, Jaden has the Blue Collar Futures actual Instagram and the channel that he spoke on there. So he provides updates and question
Yes.
prompts there, which is perfect.
Yes. Yeah, and we've
Glad
had
that you do
people
that.
actually use that, and I've been very glad for that. So I've actually gone through and seen some replies to messages. You can actually reply to any of the messages on there. So if you join, you can drop them in wherever. If you go too far back, I won't see. But like on the message about the Q&A or even the message about this episode, you can drop them in there. So awesome. Well, Jesse, it's
Thanks,
another
man.
good
Appreciate you having me
episode.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this
Thanks
is
for
fun.
coming on. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening, guys.